I like what you said. I think that when we get exposed to everything that we see on TikTok, it's just a big turnoff because it's clear that they make the majority of their money selling IUL, and so
Yeah,
most of them are not securities licensed, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But
right.
if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and so in order to sell your IUL, you have to exalt the IUL, and you have to debase everything else, including some investments that I really, really like Roth 401ks, Roth IRAs, Roth conversions. And I just don't think that's right. I don't think it's right to make the IUL out to be a silver bullet or a panacea. It does some very specific things that no other tax-free vehicles can do, but at the same time, it works best in concert with all of those other tax-free vehicles. As you know, I believe in having between 4 and 6 different streams of tax-free income. I think if all you ever talk about is life insurance, you look like a life insurance agent, and nobody wants to hand their life savings over to a life insurance agent. I know I wouldn't want to hand if somebody came up to me and said, Dave, you can either put all your money in an IUL or you can spread your money among, a Roth IRA, Roth 401k, Roth conversion, take money out of your IRA up to your standard deduction. Uh, if you keep your provisional income low enough, then your Social Security will be tax free. And we're gonna throw the IUL in there because it does some specific things that nothing else can do. It can give you a death benefit that doubles as long-term care. It can be used as a volatility shield where you can pay for your lifestyle expenses in the year following a down year in the stock market. So you give your money a chance to recover before taking further distributions. It can function as with an annuity as a viable bond alternative. So I just think that it makes more sense to approach the IUL and any life insurance policy for that matter in a balanced, comprehensive way. And I think that we do a disservice not only to the industry, but to our clients and prospects when we make the IUL out to be something that it really isn't.
Well, I think the TikTok discussion is always a good one and kind of a funny one too, because you've covered it at length in your videos and they're entertaining and educational, which is always a good mix to have. And it's not just TikTok, it's the YouTube reels, it's the Facebook reels, all of that we're doing the real stuff too. But it's like it's almost like we started doing it as like a combative against like bad information. You get these stars in whatever organizations. I don't know if it's just naturally they get a big audience or if they just maybe it's just clickbait, whatever. And it's like the amount of people that they have influence over that are believing them. And then they go and they try to market themselves as these experts because they're writing a lot of business. And you and I both know that just because you're writing a lot of business does not make you an expert. Okay. Now, for a period of time, it might. But I think it's interesting having the conversation about licensed only agents versus duly licensed agents or advisors, right? So a lot of people know this about me. Some people don't. Is I am actually only insurance licensed, but it's not because I don't like or don't want to, or at some point won't get my Series 65 or something along those lines. It's because of my business model. So I've made my business model in a way where, we have CFP partners that do the managed money. Therefore, it's a great relationship. Client gets taken care of. We also have tax attorneys that we work with. It's more of, it's not just a referral partnership. It's an actual, an actual on paper partnership. And my expertise is just on the annuity side. Now, that's different because those types of that type of model comes back with referrals from other agencies, right? So I don't have to go do the managed money. I don't have to oversell something. That's just not the case when it comes to a lot of life insurance agents, right? People ask me all the time, Tracy, why don't you do that? Well, because honestly, it's because I don't have time for it. I don't have time, and nor do I want to manage money. That's just not my expertise in that way. Where I can refer that to somebody who is an expert, perfect. Clients can get taken care of a better way. But I would never, ever, ever tell an agent to not do it. I think it would be silly for you not to do it. It's credibility, it's training, it's learning. You now don't feel as though you're pressured to make a sale. And that pressure is important, right? You've been doing this for a while. I've been very blessed to find success at a young age, so I don't have that pressure anymore. But when you're newer, right, and you have to pay your bills, even if you do have a high sense of morality or ethics, the pressure, it's always, it's like the little guy on the shoulder, right? It's gonna be there. You wouldn't have that if you were duly licensed, right?
Right.
So
Right. And yeah, I guess one consideration if you're duly licensed and it is just a logistical one. For example, let's say that I'm duly licensed, which I am, um, and I come across someone from Ed Jones, and that Ed Jones advisor is mired down in the tax deferred paradigm, got everything in IRAs and 401ks, and just continuing to grow and compound that tax liability over time. Um, if I am only, well, let's back up. Let's say that I'm only insurance licensed, and I say, look, you need to do an IUL, and you need to do an IUL in this amount. By the way, go back and persuade your Ed Jones guy to do a Roth IRA for you and to start doing some Roth conversions. Oh, and by the way, every year on the policy anniversary, I'm going to go to the Ed Jones guy and say, Mother, may I, to get the premium for your IUL. Um, put differently,
right.
I've heard this analogy where if you have one plumber who puts the bottom of your toilet on, and you got another plumber that puts the top of the toilet on, and your toilet springs a leak, which plumber are you going to call, right? And everybody's going to be pointing towards the other person. Is just not practical to do a comprehensive um, strategy as far as tax-free retirement planning goes. And so
Absolutely.
it's really nice to be able to wrap your arms around the entire um, net worth of the client or prospect, so that you can give comprehensive advice and not have to try to dovetail your advice with the advice of someone else who may not necessarily share your same paradigm, because it's going to be a constant tug of war over who gets what and who's doing what, and it's just so. Can you do this business if you have a very specific niche where you're just doing insurance and annuities? Absolutely, and you're showing
Right.
that. But to do the type of planning that I describe in the Power of Zero, for example, it's just easier if you have the ability to wrap your arms around all the assets.
Absolutely. 100%. Yep. Um, yeah, I think if there's anybody out there that's telling, agents or advisors or whomever that no, you don't need that license, I think 99% of the time it's wrong. When I tell people I mean, technically, if you do it the right way from a moral standpoint, you don't, but really you really do. If we're just being candid and open and honest, you do, unless you have like I said, you have a very specific business model, which no, people aren't just going to follow that. It just isn't going to happen. So unless you plan to do that, go get the dang license, and ultimately the consumer side, they like working with the fiduciary type of advisor, right? So when you have like a fee-based license, you follow that fiduciary standard. So you're held. Yes, there's more behind that, and there's more regulation and whatnot, but I don't see regulation as being necessarily a bad thing. Yeah, it can be kind of a little bit of a stitch in the side, so to speak, sometimes. But ultimately, it's just trying to save the consumer most of the time from bad advisors. So I have to jump through a few hoops. So be it. We get paid, in a way that we make a good living with what we do. It's okay to spend a little bit more time doing that, right? That's okay. If people are heeing and
Right.
hawing over it, that's
And
another
fr- and and, fr-
story.
and frankly, the problem with TikTok and all these other social media platforms is it's like the wild, wild west. They don't have the same compliance overview
Right.
um, that the rest of us do. And so I mean, the types of things, Tracy, that I've seen people get away with saying on TikTok would curl your hair. I mean, it's just
I know.
absolutely, um, you know, what's the right word? It's borderline criminal, I guess is what I would say. I mean, I see people guaranteeing tax-free income out of an
Right.
IUL. You're guaranteed to get this amount of income from 65 to age 100, and it's just we're making promises that we can't deliver. and we're making the IUL out to be this glorified, what do you call it? The type of knife, Swiss Army knife. Sorry, the word
Right.
eluded me. A Swiss Army
Yeah.
knife of financial products. For example, I just saw a TikTok video that by Curtis Ray, and I'm going to be doing a video on that soon, where Curtis Ray says, "Why in the world would you want to have money in a emergency fund? If you have $40,000 in an emergency fund, it's only growing at 1%, and if you keep it in there for 30 years, it's only going to be worth 41,000, 200 by the time you tap into that 30 years later. And then if you were to conversely put that into an IUL earning 10%, you're going to have $750,000, and then that's going to crank out an income of 2.5 million. Well, first of all, an emergency fund is designed to be tapped into.
Yeah.
We don't have the luxury of saying, let's do a comparison where we could grow it at 10%, because how many emergencies are you going to have between now and when you're 65? You'll probably have one a year. And so we can't say that the emergency fund should go into the IUL, because the whole thing with the IUL is it only really works if you allow it to marinate and build a head of steam. If you're constantly tapping into it to to plug the hole in your roof, or to pay for a health crisis, or whatever, then that money's not going to be growing and compounding, and that's the issue. And so this is the type of advice that we see on TikTok and elsewhere that I think does a disservice to all of the other financial advisors who are doing it the right way.
Absolutely. That's actually an awesome segue to the comparison side, because you see it all the time, right? You want to, these, I don't even want to call them advisors, these salespeople, they are comparing an IUL to equities. They're comparing an IUL, like I said, like you said here, to savings accounts. And really, you said it earlier, an IUL, when structured properly, and it's actually the same thing with an annuity, when structured properly and given the right amount of time, is more of a bond alternative, right? So when you see these types of comparisons where they're looking at it as an equities replacement or a 401k replacement, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, well, like I've said in countless videos on my channel,
Right.
I don't like it very much at all. I think that one of the issues that we've had, and there was a one particular advisor who was showing how you could average 15.3%, how a particular product could average 15.3% over the last 20 years or something.
Oh,
And
Lord.
really what he was doing, it was a sort of a reverse engineered index where basically these companies are saying, had you had your money in this specific allocation of indices and had the cap been X over the last 20 years, and this is what you could have expected to receive over that time frame. And of course, anybody can put together a portfolio that looks great in retrospect. The challenge is to build a portfolio that's going to do great moving forward in time. And so I called that guy out, and strangely enough, I haven't seen him put out any more videos like that. So I mean, that means I'm reaching some people. So, but the bottom line is, it's not going to give you 15%. It's not even going to
No.
give you 10%. I know there's some,
Right.
Doug Andrew and some others are talking about that. What we're looking for over the life of the program, and when we say life of the program, Tracy, we're saying 30 to 50 years. Don't start the IUL unless you plan on finishing it. Don't
Yep.
do an IUL unless you're planning on keeping it till the rest of your life, till the end of your life, because it doesn't make sense to do it unless it's in force when you die. It's like getting married. You got to keep it till death do you part, or you're better off never having done it to begin with. And so we're looking at a 30 to 50 year time frame. And I think that if we're looking at a 30 to 50 year time frame, we're letting it cook, we're letting it marinate, we're letting it build a head of steam, so that the expenses reduce as they're designed to do over time, and your internal rate of return will slowly go up over that time frame. And so I think what you can expect is between 5 to 7% net of fees over that time frame, which is, if you're thinking about bonds without taking any more risk than what you're accustomed, or any more market risk than what you're accustomed to taking in your savings account, that's a great rate of return for a portion of your portfolio. But
Right.
shouldn't be your entire portfolio. I still
Absolutely.
think you should have money in the stock market. I think that If you have money in an IUL and or an annuity, it allows you to take more risk in the stock market because that's your bond portion of your portfolio. You can then eliminate the bonds in the market portion of your portfolio. And you have a volatility buffer in the event that the market goes down. You draw on those annuities or life insurance until the market recovers, and then you can continue drawing money out of that. So, yeah, I think we would all do well to understand the limitations of the IUL and convey to our clients. There's nothing wrong with conveying to our clients that 5 to 7% is what they can expect. I think where we get into the problem of saying 10 to 12% is when we say, okay, we're not securities licensed, therefore we have to present something that's just as productive as the stock market portfolio. And then we start to exaggerate the benefits and the potential returns of these types of products. And that's where we get in trouble, and we create expectations that can't be met.
Absolutely. So I think it's interesting. I don't think that everybody's just inherently bad, right? I don't think a lot of these IUL or annuity agents or advisors are saying a lot of these numbers because they just want to lie. I think there's something in our industry that is a problem, and you and I could agree on it, which is all these back-tested indices, right? We have hypothetical back tests that go back 10, however many years, where the index only went live 6 months ago. Okay, I just saw one hit my email. Index just went live with a carrier August 1st, but it back tests 10+%. And then you go inside of these products, you add these enhanced participation rates on there. You add these, high caps, whatever. And when an advisor or agent is sitting down and they're trying to learn these things, and they have somebody, let's call it an upline, let's call it an IMO, let's call it a carrier marketing rep, I think all of those, or other social media influencer, I'm going to call it, telling them these types of numbers, they're starting to believe it. And who are they to not believe it when on paper it shows these numbers, like in illustrations? They don't know what they don't know. And that's why education is unbelievably important. I just had a guy in my group that he showed me some IUL illustrations that were 10+%. And I was like, he was talking to me about it, and we're going through comment. And I'm like, what is this guy talking about? He's talking about history. And then he shows, well, here's what I got from X carrier. And I think you and I know there's one carrier out there that I know of that actually has and publishes historical returns on IULs. I think there's really only one. Maybe there's more. You can correct me on that. I know of one. Okay. And it was a back test. It was a carrier illustration. And I had to explain that to them. And this is somebody who's been doing this for years, right? So here's my question for you. With that being said, how do we fix that?
Yeah, I think we fix it sort of one advisor at a time. One of my goals has been to combat that type of misinformation through my channel. I like to call out malfeasance wherever I see it. I mean, I like to defend the IUL when people make irresponsible statements about it. The video I put out today is why the IUL's fees are its strength. And the thing that I can't understand is why Dave Ramsey and Suze Yorman, Clark Howard and Jeremy Schneider and Ramit Sethi and all these quote unquote financial gurus talk about how the single greatest issue or foible of the IUL are its high fees. Well, if you keep it long enough, if you keep it for your entire life, the fees actually become its strength. It's actually the thing that makes it so competitive with the 401ks and the other traditional products. So I think we have to just tell the truth. We have to call out the criticisms when the criticisms are unfounded, but we have to be fair and balanced. We have to also call out the financial advisors who are telling tall tales when it comes to these types of products. And so I think if everybody will just focus on telling the truth and putting the truth ahead of their commission or however it is they make money, I think that ultimately, and I know that I'm on the right track because I know there's people on, uh, my good friend Andy Panko on
Yeah.
LinkedIn
Yeah.
who is on a crusade to call out these, these IUL agents who have scammy marketing approaches. I think he appreciates the approach that I'm taking, because I'm not saying the IUL isn't a viable, financial instrument. It is when utilized in the right way, but it also has its limitations. And I think that when we call out the limitations instead of talking about it as a one size fits all, Swiss Army knife, panacea, silver bullet, whatever you want to call it, I think people respect that and they understand. They temper their expectations as to what they can expect from that specific part of their portfolio.
Yeah. Do you think we need more regulation with it? I mean, we obviously have regulation coming down the pipeline. It seems like that's changing all the time. For better, for worse, whatever you want to say. Do you think we need more, or do you just think we need a change of direction when it comes to regulation?
Gosh, man, when you see the types of things that I see on TikTok and Instagram every day, I mean, some of that stuff should be outlawed. I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm not saying that necessarily insurance agents should be subject to the same types of scrutiny that, people that are selling variable products could, because there's just different dynamics and different, different aspects of those respective parts of the financial plan. But there should be someone in authority who can come out and say, no, you're not allowed to say X, or you're not allowed to say Y, or conflating um, engineered retroactive returns versus actual historical track records. That's not something that you can do. Now, I think that with AG 49A and B, we're seeing much more realistic illustrations, which are right in that
Yep.
range of what I've been telling people all along they can expect from their IULs. So I
Yep.
think that's a step in the right direction. But as far as some of this other stuff that people are saying, um, I don't know. You got to rein that in somehow, and sometimes the only way to do that is the heavy hand of the law.
I agree. I agree. I'd like to have, whether it's the Department of Insurance and Financial Services, which should oversee that, obviously, I would love to see them have like a task force that they create where we can go and just anonymously submit clips that people have out there. Hey, I just saw this clip. Boom, here you go. Handle it, right? Wouldn't that be great to have a team of people that they're solely dedicated to doing that? I feel like that wouldn't be that hard, right? I mean, you what, team of 5 people, you just watch videos all day long, right?
Yeah, and
Something
they'd
like
be
that.
entertaining. You would have a
It
fun
would.
job. Watching those types of videos would be fun. And part of my challenge is, there's a lot of these people out there who do these videos, who like the power of zero, who like what I preach. And so sometimes I have to call out people in my own audience
Yeah.
who are maybe utilizing power of zero principles in sort of an adulterated way. They're using the power of zero as a heavy-handed way of getting what they want, or sort of misinterpreting what I'm saying in the power of zero. I mean, if you
Right.
read closely in the power of zero, I haven't changed my tune in 10 years. It's always been, you know, comprehensive, balanced approach to tax-free retirement. Have 4 to 6 different streams of tax-free income, none of which show up on the IRS's radar, but all of which contribute to you being in the 0% tax bracket. Only one of which is life insurance. I say that in my flagship presentation that I give 100 times across the country. I've been doing this for 25 years, and it's impossible to get to the 0% tax bracket by utilizing just one stream of tax-free income. You can't get there by just contributing to a Roth IRA. You can't get there by just owning an LIRP. To get to the 0% tax bracket requires typically between 4 and 6 different streams of tax-free income. And I think the minute people understand that, and to give an example, a lot of people talk about, hey, tax rates are going up. I believe that tax rates are going up. They'll talk about all the reasons why tax rates are going up, and that's the reason why you should get an IUL. Well, that may be
Oh,
partially the reason you should get an IUL,
right,
but it's
right.
also one of the reasons why you should get a Roth IRA, Roth 401k, Roth conversion,
Yeah,
and all the other things that we talk about.
exactly.
So,
Yeah, it's just there's no absolutes in what we do. And if you talk in absolutes, most of the time you really shouldn't be taken serious, right? There is no one absolute. And ultimately, I just sat down with a guy earlier today who's asked me about he does business consulting, but he's at that age where, he was asking me about my business. And I told him he's asked me very pointed questions. He was saying, what do you think is the best here, best there? And I said, Joe, there's not a best solution. It's you. It's about your situation. There's no one best. Now, do I think something of what I do would fit your situation? Sure, but it's how much, how long, what problem are we solving? If you're not solving a problem, why in the heck are you doing it? Right? That's a big part of what we do. You mentioned Dave Ramsey, right? I'm going to pivot here, unless you have a comment on that.
no, it's good.
Okay. So you mentioned Dave Ramsey. Loved your Dave Ramsey video. I've been following Dave for a long time. I've read 2 of his books. And I think Dave, and we will probably agree on this, I think Dave actually has good advice generally for things like getting out of debt, right? Generally, I understand leveraging debt as a business owner, do it all the time. General advice, getting out of debt, saving for retirement. General advice is good, but I think where he really falls short, and if anybody watches David McKnight's video here, you'll know. So where he falls short is the absolutes, right? He talks in absolutes. Nobody should own permanent life insurance. Nobody should have annuities. And then in quotes on his website says possibly variable annuities. So I took a little page out of your book recently, and I did a video called why Dave Ramsey's wrong about annuities. And I got a lot of hate for it. You mean family members that follow Dave. And there's a sense here where I wasn't trying to necessarily attack Dave. I'm just calling out information as I see it through data, facts, statistics, whatever. And so on his website, he has a whole article about annuities, and it was riddled with inaccuracies. Why do you think it is that somebody, and maybe this is a very open-ended question here, somebody like Dave is so against something where if you look at it the right way and you follow facts and data, it proves him wrong? Why do you think he's been on this crusade against it for so many years?
I've actually got some very clearly formed thoughts about this. I'm actually writing a book about why Dave and other financial gurus say the things that they do.
Okay. But
So
don't give
one
us
of the
too much.
things,
Don't give us too
I'm
much
not
then.
giving you too much, but one of the things I will tell you is that, Dave Ramsey is trying to appeal to a very broad audience. And in the process of doing so, you can't connect with everybody if you say, well, annuities work in scenarios A, B, C, and D, but not in E, F, G, and H. Okay.
Right.
Now all of a sudden people are thinking, oh, well, there's actually nuance to financial strategy. And if nuance is what's required, then maybe Dave is not my guy. Maybe I need
Ah,
to go out and find a comprehensive, balanced financial advisor who can give me a customized strategy for my situation. He has to be able to convey to the masses that this is easy stuff, broad stroke principles. If you follow them, you're going to be in great shape. I think that's one of the problems. I think the other one is he's just got to make it. Let me just give you a specific example for which Dave has gotten a lot of heat over the years. He says, and I'm sure you're familiar with this. He says that if you have an all stock portfolio, you should never have any bonds ever, even when you're in retirement. Have an all stock portfolio. You'll average 12% per year. Therefore, you should be able to take 8% withdrawals per year, which is double what the industry standard, the gold standard, the 4% rule is. So he's
yikes.
saying 12% rates of return, 8%, 8% sustainable distribution rates. One of the reasons that he does this is because he's speaking to a lot of low income, high debt viewers. Okay.
Right.
And if he says you're going to get 8% growth and you can only ever take a 4% distribution rate, then that's going to put retirement so far out of reach for these people that they may not even ever get started. However, if you say, $300 a month over the next 30 years at 12% per year, you can then take an 8% distribution rate off that corpus of money in retirement. Now, all of a sudden, they're thinking, wow, this is a lot easier than I thought it would be. And maybe they're more inclined to make that first investment. So, and there's 3 or 4 other reasons. Dave Ramsey is he's purposely set up a very antagonistic relationship with the mainstream financial advisor community because he wants that adversarial relationship. He wants to peel off clients from the mainstream financial community so that they start following him. That's the name of the game. It's expanding Dave's empire. So that's what it's all about. Now, all financial gurus employ these types of strategies to some extent, but Dave is the king. And so when it comes to annuities, it runs counter to his general worldview that stocks are the only way to go. I mean, if he's against bonds, he's certainly going to be against annuities. And if you can get 12% return, why would you want to lower yourself to 5 to 7% returns that you could get in an annuity? And if you're always going to get 12%, you don't need to worry about longevity risk. So why would you need, guaranteed income for life? So those are just a couple of my thoughts. I'm fleshing it out in a full long form book. But yeah, I mean, he's a real piece of work.
Yeah, when you come out with that, you'll definitely have to let us know so we can share the daylights out of it. That would be great. I love that. And I can throw, it's funny, I can throw probably Ken Fisher in that same kind of type.
Oh no,
category as well.
Ken Fisher's in there too. I've already written a chapter about him.
You have? Perfect. Love that. Okay.
Yep.
So something, and because those can be more, it's definitely more geared towards the advisor and the consumer here, but one thing that we hit on a lot, and I'm going to go back to Dave here. Something that I did was I took the top 25 performing mutual funds over the last 30 years and I back tested them to get an average. Okay. This is something that I do a lot of because I want to see best case scenario. What would I have done? We're talking absolute best case. And the average rate of return was 12.32%. Okay. Over the 25 mutual funds. Right. So that right there shows that when somebody says that it's 12% average, okay, in the best case scenario, right? Now taking 8% out over the last 20 something years, you actually reduced your principal by, I think it was like 3/4. You're down to like $250,000 or somewhere around there. Right. So that type of data, when you change that average by 1 or 2%, you go broke. And why you go broke, and this is a huge principle, and I wanted to ask you about it. The biggest part of what we do, I would say, are, and I hate to use this term, but I'm going to use it, selling point, okay, but bear with me on that, okay, is sequential returns risk or sequence of returns risk, right? How important, and for those of you who are watching this, sequence of returns risk is basically, it's telling you that the average really doesn't mean anything. It's all about the sequence of the return, 20% up, 20% down, what that sequence looks like over time. That's why there's something called the 4% rule with inflation added to it. So knowing what that is and how detrimental that can be in retirement, and I would argue that it's, paired with longevity risk, probably the biggest key factor in why people run out of money in retirement. Do you feel like that for you, when it comes to IULs, annuities, everything that you do you think that that's one of the biggest points, or are there multiple here, or is that one of the big ones?
Yeah, it's a pretty big point. I mean, the reason why we're constrained by the 4% rule, some people call it the 3% rule, is because of sequence of return risk. It's the order in which you experience returns specifically in the first 10 years of retirement. That's where it's a real killer. You get past the first 10 years of retirement, the sequence of return, it's not as severe in terms of sending your retirement into sending your retirement balance into a death spiral from which it never recovers. The first 10 years is where you really have to protect yourself. Okay. And the 4% rule would not be the 4% rule if we didn't have to worry about sequence of return risk. It might be the 6% rule, or it might be the 8% rule. But way back in the day, before William Bengen created the 4% rule, people used to stick their finger in there and they'd say, hey, what have historical returns been in the stock market? And whatever answer you came up with, that was the sustainable withdrawal rate that you could experience moving forward. So if you said, hey,
8%.
the stock market over the last 50 years did 8%. I can take 8% out. So that was
Yeah.
sort of how we did it. So it's all about sequence of return. The idea, and just to give you an example, a real life example of what would happen if you put 100% of your retirement in stocks, like Dave Ramsey's recommending, and you took an 8% distribution rate, like Dave Ramsey's recommending, and your hope is to get your money to last for 30 years in retirement, you would have a 36% chance that your money would last through life expectancy. So this is the reality of what Dave Ramsey's recommending. That
Wow.
means you have a 2 in 3 chance that you are going to run out of money before you run out of life. Okay. And so at that point, you have to eke out an existence on Social Security alone, which is not an awesome way to, spend your golden years. So it's all about sequence of return. That's why we have these types of financial instruments. The IUL works great because if you have enough time to save 3 or 4 years worth of living expenses in that IUL, you can live out of that IUL as you're, allowing your stock portfolio to recover. If you have 3 or 4 years, that can increase your sustainable withdrawal rate up to 80% with a 95% chance you'll never run out of money. That's unbelievable. If you want to have a 100% chance you'll never run out of money, take your pension and your Social Security, subtract that from your lifestyle, bridge the gap with a guaranteed lifetime income annuity. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. And that gives you a 100% chance that you'll never run out of money. So I tell people, hey, if you're already retired, you can't do the volatility shield concept. So let's get you an annuity. If you're younger, put 30% of your retirement savings into an IUL, build up 3 to 4 years worth of living expenses in that IUL by the time you retire, and then you can double your withdrawal rate to 8%, but not doing it the Dave Ramsey way.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. It's something that it's hard for people to wrap their head around sometimes, the sequence of return. Like I hear a lot of people say, well, 4%. What do you mean 4%? That's not enough. I think I don't know if you follow David Blanchett at all on LinkedIn. Good dude to follow, has a lot of good data out there. I believe he just posted a study that how out of most retirees, how many of them believe that they can receive 10% in income a year, and it was an alarming amount. Like it was something like it was something over 50% of people. And it's a reality check. It's that kind of accumulation stage versus the decumulation stage, and your investment strategy being completely different. I wanted to ask you, and we'll wrap up here. So when a retiree gets to the point where they are decumulating those assets, right? Warren Buffett has a great quote out there. Love him or hate him, I don't really have an opinion on him. And it's why would you risk what you have for something you don't need? Pretty common quote from him. So my question is, when somebody gets to that stage, what is your normal process for understanding somebody's risk tolerance? I'm sure you run through a risk profile. What are some major key points that you use when determining what they're comfortable with?
Yeah, we do have a traditional risk profile. But by the time I'm done educating them, this is probably what they're going to end up doing. Okay.
Right.
They're going to have a fixed index annuity that's going to be deferred during a Roth conversion period. We're going to be using an annuity that has a piecemeal, what I call a piecemeal internal Roth conversion in my book, Tax Free Income for Life. So they're going to be deferring that until the Roth conversion period is done. That might be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And then once they get to the point where that Roth conversion is complete, they're ready to draw income out of that. They are going to couple that tax-free income with Social Security and a pension. If they have a pension, they're not going to be 100% tax-free. If they just have Social Security, they're probably going to be tax-free. In the meantime, we're leaving money in the stock market because now that we have the annuity, they have the luxury of watching that stock market go up and down. We're probably going to take as much risk as we can. It's going to be pedal to the metal, high octane, because we got to get that money to last the full 30 years of their retirement. In the meantime, we're funding an IUL probably over 5 to 7 years. That's also going to be functioning as a sort of a volatility buffer. So really, you're using your stock portfolio to pay for shock expenses. It's your
Right.
discretionary account. So you might be an aspirational expense. You want to go take the kids to Disney World, or you have to plug a hole in the roof. Either way, that's what the stock market money is going to do. But we need that to last a full 30-year retirement. So the IUL and the annuity are going to work in concert to allow us to take as much risk as we can in that market so that it'll last through life expectancy. In the meantime, we have safe, productive money inside the annuity, inside the LIRP, that are going to give us the luxury of taking all that risk in the market.
Love it. And side question here. Do you, and I know this is very broad stroke here, okay? Do you find that you still write when it fits and plan using an IUL for those that are in retirement, or would you say on average it's normally younger than that? What are you seeing? And I guess it sure depends on your demographic as well.
Yeah, I get a little nervous when they're over 65. I wouldn't totally rule it out because really you need 10 to 15 years to let it
Right.
grow
It's
and
very
compound and marinate,
situational. Right.
before you start taking money out. But frankly, 70% of the people that we meet with are between 58 and 62. And the reason why they're using the IUL is because of long-term care.
Okay.
You've got anyone over age 50. What do they have four of? They have four parents. What's the likelihood that one of those parents is going through a long-term care event even as we speak? It's pretty high. And so when they walk into our classrooms, we do a lot of teaching and workshops in universities. They walk into our classroom, they say, one of the burning platforms they have is, how do I avoid going through what my parents are currently going through right now? Or one of our parents, might be an in-law, might be a parent. And traditionally the answer has been, get a long-term care policy. But people don't love long-term care policies because it's use it or lose it, hard to qualify, it's very expensive. So when we come along and we say, hey, look, you have this IUL, it's growing tax-free. They're like, that's great. I can get that in my Roth IRA or my Roth 401k. We say, but it gives you a death benefit that doubles as long-term care. In other words, you can get the death benefit in advance of your death for the purpose of paying for long-term care. Now, all of a sudden, oh, and by the way, if you die peacefully in your sleep 30 years from now, never having needed long-term care, someone's still getting a death benefit, probably your kids or your grandkids. Most of the time they want to give it to their grandkids. So probably your kids or your grandkids. So there isn't that sensation of having paid for something you hope you never have to use. This is a huge selling point for a lot of people. And that's why 70% of the IULs that we put in force are with people whose primary concern is mitigating the long-term care risk. And so it just solves a couple of different purposes, but it doesn't solve every need. And that's why we complement it with all of these other things.
That's great. And I will be candid here. I don't know if I've ever really thought of the IUL side for long-term care, but now you've kind of completely opened up completely opened up that. Now I got to go do some more research on that. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Well, anything that you want to leave with. So tell us about your social media handles. I know you got a couple books out. Tell us about all that.
Sure, you bet. YouTube channel, feel free to go and subscribe. I tell people all the time, if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, you'll become David McKnight within 6 months. Only without the 7 kids. But if you want the 7 kids, I can show you how to do that too. But there's no videos for that. So YouTube channel is The Power of Zero. I've got a podcast. It's also called the Power of Zero Show. There's really 4 books that I think the public has found a lot of benefit in. You got The Power of Zero, Look Before You LERP, The Volatility Shield, and Tax-Free Income for Life. I also wrote a novel about a year ago. It came out about a year ago, called The Infinity Code, which talks about, it's sort of a Dan Brown thriller type suspense novel that talks about modern monetary theory. And people have said, Dave, of all your books, I like that one the best. So you got that. And if advisors want to learn more about what we do from a marketing perspective, they can go to powerzero.com and opt into a free 3-part video series. Follow me on Twitter at McKnight & Co. or Instagram, David C. McKnight. And man, I think that's pretty much all I got.
And you're on LinkedIn too.
I am on LinkedIn. That's right.
Yep. Awesome. Great. Well, David, again, thank you for your time. Much appreciated. Tons of value. I don't think the audience, and I'm hoping by the end of this, they'll really understand how much value you actually bring, not only to these little clips like this and videos, but also just to the industry as a whole. So from not only from me, but also from everybody else, I'm going to speak on behalf of. Thank you for that.
Hey, my pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you, and I feel like we've become good friends, even if only over social media. And I'm sure I'll have a chance to meet you in person soon.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you again, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks, Tracy.